Don Mazzella here for Small Business Digest. You know, when I got a notice about Brad Burgtorf, I said I wish I was as smart as him because he started a company somewhat remotely, and I think that's great because we've had people on this program that insist you have to be on top of your company every day. Brad's going to talk about that and other things. But first, he's going to tell us a little bit about himself, a little bit about his company, High Camp, and finally, how you can learn more. But Brad, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Don. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, so I think before we get into the remote work, it probably makes sense to go back in time and how I got here. So I started my career, and a big important part of how fortunate I have been is that I started my career with the Securities and Exchange Commission out of undergrad in 2003. And so that was an interesting place to be at the time because it was following corporate scandals like WorldCom and Enron and the dot-com crash. And so I was able to get a lot of exposure with the capital markets of the U.S. The SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, they do a lot of things. They regulate public companies and their filings, and that are allowed to trade on public exchanges. They regulate brokers and advisors that provide advice on securities. It's you can say what you want about regulation, but I think it's commonly understood that you don't want, grandmas and grandpas like trading in pet.com, 90% of their money and losing their money in that type of instrument. So it was a fun place to be as a 22, 23-year-old out of undergrad, but I quickly realized that, the government wasn't a long time place for me to be. So after 5.5 years or so, I started looking to the private sector, and I was fortunate enough to land at a reputable consulting company that focused on advising and supporting firms that were registered with the SEC, but needed a hand navigating those complex regulations. And so shortly thereafter, it wasn't really an opportune time to leave the government for the private sector, because that was right when the great financial crisis was happening in 2008. But nonetheless, I was able to weather that storm and got great exposure on the heels of the great financial crisis to private equity and hedge funds and real estate managers that for the first time had to register with the SEC. And so that's when I actually really started falling in love with compliance. And so I spent 8 years on the consulting side as an employee at a large consulting company. But somewhere along that timeline, I started looking elsewhere. But what really, kicked me to look to start a business was once I got married. I took a year sabbatical, and my wife is much more adventurous than I am. And part of that adventure was shown in, we took a year sabbatical to travel the world. I was a little older. We wanted to have kids, but we wanted to spend some time with each other before starting that adventure. And so we traveled the world, and that time away from, really the corporate world allowed me to kind of look elsewhere. Instead of going back to that firm, I was looking for what suited my lifestyle, what suited my, soon to be small family, what suited, where I wanted to take my career. So it's always a balancing act. And we moved to Montana, which is the last place that you would think to start a financial services consulting company. But that's where my wife and we myself wanted to raise our family. And so we knew that remote working was a possibility, and this was pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. But we made a go of it, and I needed that confidence and support from my wife. But I was really working remotely for, at that point, about 10 years or so. So I knew that I could work remotely, but it was a big unknown about, recruiting a team and recruiting, clients under that environment. I think COVID and the pandemic really fast tracked that come 2020 to today. But yeah, there's a lot of unknowns. But it was at the point of starting the business, it was more about, what was good for my lifestyle at the time. Now it's since morphed and changed, and as all businesses do. But in a gist, that's kind of how we got started.
Well, I'm going to stop you here and ask you a question. I always ask when people say they went on sabbatical. Did it strengthen your marriage? Did you find things from it that you didn't expect?
Yeah, best decision we ever made. I mean, it's you know, traveling, spending time on the road, going on grand adventures, puts you in, moments of uncomfortable situations. When you're with the person you love, that strengthens that bond. So without a doubt, it made our relationship much stronger.
Hmm. Well, how long were you married before you went on a trip?
We got married September 10th, and we went on the trip the next day. So yeah, it
Okay.
was. We joked that it was a year-long honeymoon. So
Okay. Before we go any further, your website for your website.
yeah, our website is highcampcompliance.com. HIGHCAMPCOMPLIANCE. High Camp Compliance. I'm looking to shorten it to High Camp.
Tell us now a little bit about your company.
Yeah, so with my SEC and Securities and Exchange background, we help mid-sized to large private fund managers. These are hedge funds, these are private equity, there's real estate managers that manage upwards of multi-billions of capital in private funds to help them navigate SEC rules and regulations. So that's filings, that's policies, that's testing policies. We're effectively their outsourced compliance department in certain circumstances.
Hmm. Well, I always ask this question. You know, do you think there's too much regulation, not just enough, or should there be less?
I think it depends on who you are. I think the regulations impact everyone a little bit differently. I think generally I'm pro regulation, pro thoughtful regulation. That being said, private funds in the space that we're in, there a lot of the regulations predated the existence of these vehicles and these structures, and so it's hard to adapt those legacy regulations to 2023. There's been an explosion in the markets in these sectors. There's an appetite for investors to invest in these funds. The SEC is tasked with regulating them. They've got upwards of 4,500 people on their staff, 400 people in their exam unit. There's financial institutions that have that large of legal and compliance and risk department in themselves, let alone in a whole industry. And just to give you some context, there's over 15,000 investment advisors. So the SEC has a hard task in regulating that volume and a diverse volume of firms. So yeah, I think certain regulations make sense and are well received within the industry. I think some, and in certain administrations that can be overly aggressive, it can be a little frustrating because it gets in the way of running a successful and growth-oriented business.
Well, let me ask you this question. This is a show of for small business. Um, do you have some suggestions when people start out with the idea that the end result is going to be a liquidity event of some sort involving stock or anything? Do you have some suggestions of what they should be doing from the very beginning of their journey to make it easier at the end of the journey?
Yeah, so my advice would be to build out and spend money on the infrastructure, right? Like those early days, you're grinding out, you're you're doing a lot of sales. It can be easy to overlook the infrastructure, the cybersecurity, the accounting, the resources, the legal. But if you do that, you will be playing catch up. The easiest time to set the culture and the foundation of any risk mitigation, whether you're professional services like myself or private equity fund manager, it's important to invest those dollars early on and take a long-term view in a scalable manner, because you can quickly get over your ski tips without doing so.
Well, well, we sold our company, we had a stack of paperwork at the closing that was almost 2 feet high, and we had to go through and sign almost continuous. Do you think putting everything digitally makes it easier or harder down the road?
From a just efficiency perspective, I can't imagine conducting business another way. We have we're fortunate enough, we started in 2017, so we've never had paper copies, had to deal with hard copy records, and so it's much more organized in my opinion. But yeah, it's maybe you're easier, you don't read as closely if you're getting a lengthy PDF versus a hard copy paper. But
Well, let's get back to our original premise. You started out, you started thinking on the road. Did you at some point finally have to say, I've got to come in and be there, if not 24/7, at least some part of the week?
so, I've always valued an office environment. I think that, I've got an office in my hometown, Livingston, Montana. I think that the challenge for me was the people that I wanted to recruit, the top talent that I had in my network, the top clients that I wanted to support, they were nowhere near Montana. And so it was a necessary piece of the equation to be a remote company. We're now a bit more hybrid in that we do have some more offices across the country and team members that get together. We absolutely value that collaborative sense. We try to replicate that in office environment as much as possible. I've had people in Montana with me, they haven't worked out, but I will have more in the future. So I didn't start a remote company because that was my preferred mode. It was a necessary requirement to do what I wanted to do. And now we're doing whatever we can to collaborate and otherwise replicate that office environment. We do have the benefit of traveling and visiting our clients. So we see our clients regularly. And when we're seeing our clients, we're seeing other team members. We're also a small team. We've got 11 full-time employees. And so if not on a quarterly basis, certainly a couple times a year, we're visiting everyone. So it's not that we're completely on the others all the time over Zoom. So.
Well, you're in Montana. It's a great state, but it ain't New York City. How do you find people in such I should say, a knowledge industry as yours?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was really worried about how that would be received, certainly on the business development side of things. But Don, I've been doing this since 2003. I'd like to think that I've developed a track record. It really is a small industry, and so you're never really more than one or two people removed from somebody in the space. And so people that know me, and then now that my super strong team, who are not as remote as Montana, but we've got partners in LA, Denver, Dallas, Milwaukee, Morristown, New Jersey. They want to have top service and top expertise, and it doesn't matter where that is for a lot of firms. I'm grateful that that's the case, because there certainly are firms that want their consultants nearby in New York City or down the street in New York City.
Your website for people again?
Yeah, High Camp Compliance. So we don't drive business through our website, but it's a way to qualify. We're a word of mouth organization. Our clients are our biggest advocates. I haven't had to do a cold call for years now. I'm very fortunate for that. So our website is built to replicate the types of service and expertise that you're going to get. So it's a landing page once somebody has a referral for High Camp that they go and can read our bios and read more about us. We do have a newsletter and some content down there as well in the space.
Well, all I know is, um, I come to you and say, I need your help. What are some of the questions you would ask me, and what would be some of the questions I should be asking you?
Sure. So, you know, I think there's a number of similarly structured professional services firms that like offer the same services, at least on paper. So questions that I like to, when I'm looking for a service provider, and I encourage our prospective clients to ask me is, who is providing the service, right? It's one thing to have a business development professional selling something, but somebody else is going to have to be executing on that engagement to know who that is. Incentives, right? Like it's always good to know how people are incentivized. So we have half of our team has equity in HighCamp. That means we take a long-term view. We're looking for long-term partnerships with our client. That puts us a little differently situated from like the initial commission-based professional service competitors out there. So we think long and hard about, how to align ourselves with our first and foremost our team and their goals, but a quick second to our clients and what they're looking for. And so it is a challenging environment. There's a lot of new regulations. There's constantly new rulemaking coming out. And so you want to have a trusted party. And so there's a number of experienced folks out there, but you want a firm that is dependable to retain top talent. And I think that's one thing that we've done really well over the 6 years of our businesses. Our senior partners have been with us, and even before HighCamp, we've worked together at our prior roles, including at the SEC. So we've got really a good track record of providing value and expertise to clients, and I'm very proud of that.
What do you do if you find that your client has lied to you?
We have mechanisms in our contract to to get out of those relationships. I'm very fortunate that like, because we're a word of mouth organization, it's our clients and firms that we've got lengthy relationships that are referring us our next client, and so they tend to be similar best of breed managers and firms, and they're looking to do the right thing. And so we're trying to support their growth and their business and their story. If we have any red flags, either on the front end of the engagement or during the engagement, and knock on wood, it's always been on the front end of the engagement. We're not going to jeopardize our reputation anyway for somebody that doesn't take this stuff seriously.
We have just a few minutes left, but first, your website again for people?
Yeah, highcampcompliance.com.
We find that our audience likes knowing that because they eventually go to. We have just a couple of minutes left. What would you like to leave our audience with?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the time on the show and speaking with you, Don. I think it's been a fun 6 years. You never really know what the next challenge is going to be. I think running a remote company in 2023 is if not the best, has been a necessity to some degree, right? Like to retain top talent, you have to at least consider that. And it's a matter of like replicating, like I said, the in-office and the team environment, so that you are gaining synergies and efficiencies and learning from each other to provide value. So yeah, I appreciate the time on the show, and it's been fun chatting, and yeah, I would encourage anyone to step out and do it themselves. Happy to support them. Just feel free to reach out to me, and I'll give them my playbook.
This is a question I've been asking lately, getting some interesting. Would you do it again?
100%. Yeah. I always joke with my wife that I'm the most unemployable that I've ever been at this point in my career, because I can't imagine doing anything else for anybody else.
But what would you have done? What would you do differently?
I'm constantly learning and making small mistakes and trying to learn from them. So, looking back and in hindsight, absolutely, I've done some things differently. But overall, when you screw up, those are when you learn, and those are what make you a bit better. And so, I wouldn't do anything differently. I'm pretty grateful. I think I've got the best job in compliance. I've got a super strong team with amazing supportive clients. We do things the right way, and we'll continue to do things the right way. So I'm right where I want to be.
Is it a job or a passion?
That's a fantastic question. I think more often than not, it's a passion. There are, as a CEO, managing partner, founder, like you've got to do everything from, into the trenches to and usually when something goes wrong, like that falls on your plate first to fix. And so there's certainly moments where it can be challenging and you can kind of beat yourself up, but you fast forward half a day, next day, certainly the next week, and then you're back on a high. And so yeah, more passion than than job, but there's definitely, we think of ourselves as a perpetual startup. We're always going to be in the grind, and when you're in the grind, you got to get through some stuff. And so that being said, that's the fun of it, right? You look back, it's kind of like type 2 fun. It's not fun when you're doing it, but when you get through it, can catch your breath, that's very motivating to me.
Well, I'm going to ask you one more. Would you settle in Montana again if you did it over?
Yeah, no, 100%. We're actually traveling right now. My wife and I are doing a 6-month trip to Europe. We're in Scotland currently, and we love it. We've got 2 kids, 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they love it. But we can't wait to get back to Montana. Montana is just amazing. We love adventure. We love the outdoors, whether it's skiing or biking or camping, and there's no better place in the world really than Montana.
Well, on that note, we say thank you for a very illuminating time. Have a great day and a nice holiday.
I appreciate it, Don. Thanks for the time. Nice to meet you.